cosmology, we can just visualize all the marvelous things of the world and happily offer these as a request for the teachings. Sajipaki Jugshing Metog Chamri Rablingshi Nide Padi Sangye Jingdu Migte Ulwagi Drokunam Dag Jingla Chepashog Jetsanama Dampakinam Ki Chakula Kala Kiense Chutsinchik Jita Tsampe Duljetin Malan Zabye Chuki Chapa Abtusam Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Yatayami. Shall I sing the refuge prayer, Rinpoche, or would you like to sing that?
Sure, of course.
I shall sing it. I can lead. I'll do. Okay.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so we just take refuge and reminding ourselves, take refuge in our reason for being here together, this marvelous bodhicitta motivation. We can have the prayer up, Sunny. Sangye chodang choke chognam la jangcho badu dagni kyap suchi dagi chonyen gi personam ki drola penche sangye drupha shok sangye chodang choke chognam la jangcho badu dagni kyap suchi dagi chonyen gi personam ki drola penche sangye drupha shok sangye Cherang soke chong nam la, jang cho badu dagni kyab suchi, dagi chönyen gi personam ki, drola penchir sange, drobha shok.
Kan yedo zonye sonde dawa tamje pambeche dambechu ne dunzebe godam de la chase lo. Very good evening to everyone who are residing around New York, and maybe also good morning to, I'm not sure about how many people are watching here from different time zones, so it's always easiest to say Tashidele to everyone. And first, I wanted to appreciate Venerable for leading the chanting. Thank you so much. It was really beautiful, wonderful. And I'm very happy today to come down to New York, especially upon the invitation of Shantideva Center to share some thoughts on the life and teaching about Lord Buddha, especially about one of the main thing that I've been thinking about some time is about what we call new Buddhist thinking, so new Buddhist thoughts that we come about nowadays. I was supposed to come down to Shantideva Center in the last year, or maybe beginning of last year, but due to some technical and some other logistic issues, I couldn't do that. So I'm very happy this time. And first, I wanted to express my special greeting to all the members of Shantideva Center, and thank you so much for having me. I wanted to begin with a very beautiful thought, a beautiful saying that we have in the Pali tradition, where they say that, where Lord Buddha said that, I, I teach only that which is true and useful. So I often find this line very beautiful and very powerful indeed. And today's topic for uh, our talk or discussion is about the relevance of Lord Buddha's teaching in modern times or today's time, how the teachings of the Lord Buddha are relevant. And I think that this line really suits a description of this topic when Lord Buddha himself said, I teach only that which is true and useful. And taking these two words, the truth and useful, as we all know, what is the meaning of truth? Truth by itself is such a huge topic in Buddhism. Lord Buddha himself began his teaching, the turning of the first wheel of Dharma in Varanasi, with the teaching on Four Noble Truths. And then we also have the teaching on Two Truths as well. So we will go over it later. But the main thing I'm interested here is about what does he meant by useful? Is there a truth that may not be so useful for us in our day-to-day life? So I think the second part of the sentence is very powerful. Useful in today's context of our discussion or the talk is about something that really impacts one's personality or something that really brings a change to one's way of thinking. Or when we find a kind of a personal solution to our problems or challenges. And I think that is what Lord Buddha meant by useful. And so I won't be going into any scriptural sources or any, what should I say, those details. But today I'm just wanted to share with you and discuss with you about very general thinking about these Buddhist ideas. So the first thing is, one of the questions that really strikes me and all of us is, how come that the teachings of the Lord Buddha that were given around 5,000 years ago were still so relevant? So relevant, when I say relevant, what I really meant is that we have a certain people who call themselves, or whom someone like me, who are brought up in the monastic life, who have studied the text for many, many years, and then have gained some understanding about his teachings. So for them, the relevance of the Buddha's teaching is a different level or slightly different idea. So we do not need to think much about it. But we often meet some people, for example, when you take a public transport. And last year, when I was traveling from New York City to Boston, at the train station, I met a friend, a wonderful gentleman. He told me that he's actually from, I don't remember the country name exactly, but somewhere in Africa. And as soon as he saw me, so he came to me and asked about His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama and Lord Buddha. And I asked him, how did he get to know about Buddhism? And he told me that he read once in a newspaper article a short passage about Lord Buddha's teaching. And that really helped him with his way of life, because he has a very chronic disease that needs a very special and a very long-term treatment. And I don't exactly know what was that special reading that he got from that newspaper clip, but that really changed his life, he told me. So I'm talking about such person that often when they meet with the teachings of Lord Buddha, maybe through audio, through newspapers, through television, or nowadays maybe through social media, who have nothing to do with being a Buddhist. They're very far from being a real Buddhist as we No, they have never practiced in their life. They have never studied under a proper teacher or a guidance. But how come that the teachings of the Lord Buddha, maybe it's very simple, just one or two lines of those teachings, but that brings so much impact on those personal lives, and that bring change in them. And this is the question that really strikes me and all of us. What is the really truth or the specialty in that? I've been thinking about this topic for some time, especially last 1 week while traveling from India in the plane, and also thinking about today's topics. I was thinking, what were those real uh, special few things that makes difference? Of course, I have studied tons and tons of texts and sutras, but sometimes when you really go down and find some really, what should I say, useful answers, or some those small things that really uh, brings kind of answer those questions. So it becomes very important. So I thought that the first thing that really makes his teachings different is that maybe you can, all of you can disagree with me on some of those points. We can discuss later during the Q&A session. But I think that most of the teachings of the Lord Buddha, if you read through the text, or if you read the life stories of Lord Buddha when he encountered some people on the way, and when he give instructions to them, if you read those stories and the text, you can often see that most of them were kind of spontaneous. They were not pre-planned. There is not an original planned kind of set of thoughts or answers that Lord Buddha has prepared himself in his mind. This is very also similar to His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama as well. So depending upon a situation, depending upon a certain personality, so his responses and his teachings were suited for them at that very moment. So I think maybe we can call it spontaneous teaching. I don't know whether this is the correct word to use. So maybe at that very moment, he thinks about a particular solution to that problem. Of course, even though we say that it is spontaneous and very immediate and fast, but still, of course, the wisdom that really stays behind in his mind, that is no need to mention. So that is one reason that I think that makes his teaching different. The second one is, as everyone of us goes through in life and also sees through our own experience. So sometimes we speak about a particular topic, having read about it, having done some research about it, but not really lived through it our whole life. For example, someone like me, who has spent the last 20 years in the monastery, studying a lot of texts, learn a lot of debates, and all those, I can pretty much say a lot of things. If you ask me about difficult points, technical things, and all those things, I can explain pretty well in some way. But do I really live by all those values and ideals and practices? Or do I really day to day think about those principles in my life? In short, do I really practice them? So that is one question that I'm trying to answer myself. And since coming to America for last 2 years at the university, we do have a weekly meditation session. We call it, it's actually a academic or more or less a Christian term. We call it noon service. And during that time, we gathered whoever are interested in Buddhism meditation. We gathered around and engage in some kind of meditation or discussion about Buddhist ideas and thoughts. And one of the questions that I'm asked very often is that, do Tibetan monks and nuns really meditate or not? So that is one question that I'm asked quite often. And this is also an issue that we need to address. I personally felt for some time. So what it really meant is that whether we meditate or not, the real thing is whether we live by some of those values and the principles that we study in the text every day. So here, the teachings or the instructions that comes from someone like Buddha Shakyamuni, or even His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, and all the great teachers that we have in this world, the difference is that for many of them, or for all of them, it comes through their own experience, or it comes from their own practice. So that makes everything different. When something comes from their own experience, they went through the process, they lived by those ideals, and what they share with you is their experience that they have seen, they have heard, and they have meditated on those points. And many times we find people like me who share or who talks about different topics or things, but those topics not really went through in terms of experience. So that is one reason why I think that generally the Buddha's teachings are unique, that almost everything that Lord Buddha speaks, it went through his own experience. When I say his own experience, I also wanted to talk a little bit about Buddha Shakyamuni as a common man before he became Buddha. Of course, in the Mahayana traditions, or especially in Vajrayana traditions, we talk about Lord Buddha as being, what should I say, being enlightened in the form of 4 different kayas, and all those that he was Bodhisattva, he was enlightened millions of years before. But let's forget that for a moment and just consider him as a common man like us, who was born in Lumbini, and then he went through as a common man and then become enlightened. So if we look at his life, the first 20 years, he spent really very lavishly in his palace life. But the changing moment that really came to his life is when he went out of his gate 4 times and see 4 different situations. People in sick, people in dying, and so on and so forth. But those those experiences, whether that really brought any kind of, what should I say, a strong motivation for Prince Siddhartha to become, what should I say, let go of all the worldly facilities and then go back and to live a life of a saint or a sage at that time. Did Lord Buddha, if we look at his life story, did he really went into, what I meant is, real sufferings as we do? And then did that suffering really changed him? So even in this very at the age of 29, he became ordained. So until then, the greatest suffering I feel is that, if we speak a little bit differently, I think that there was a very strong suffering that he endured of separation from his family. That was a very difficult phase in Lord Buddha's life, which is not really touched upon in most of the sutras and the text. In the text and the sutras, we often find that he had a last glance to his wife and child before going out into the forest. So if we take that into a normal situation, that would have been the most difficult point in Lord Buddha's life, a kind of testing moment for him to, to challenge himself about attachment, to draw a very clear line between attachment and love for his family. On one hand, he is leaving everything behind. The material wealth and those things are understandable, but your wife and your son. So you also do have a responsibility towards them. You cannot just say that you wanted to go into uh, retreat, or you wanted to go into solitude, or you wanted to live a life of a sage, and so you cannot just leave anyone behind like that. So I think that that must have been a very difficult the moment in Prince Siddhartha's life that really uh, makes him a great teacher later on. That at that point, so that's the reason why when he became enlightened, the first teaching that Lord Buddha gave us about the suffering, the Four Noble Truths and sufferings that we all know. And another factor, another reason that makes the teaching of the Buddha very unique is what we often call the skillful means. So in uh, most of the Buddhist teachings and the texts, we often talks about two folds or the two ways, wisdom on one side and the skillful means on the other side. In Pali tradition, what they call the upaya, kaushalya. So being skillful in whatever teachings that you give, whatever advice or instructions that you give. And if you look at the life story of Lord Buddha, not as a Buddha, but as a teacher who also learns from day-to-day life. Because sometimes in Tibetan tradition, especially, when you consider someone and when you give someone so high up in the sky, in so high a position that he is omniscient one, he knows everything, and then you missed very important and interesting aspects of the life that uh, you will see otherwise. And if you carefully read all those important phases of Buddha Shakyamuni, especially when you read those special accounts of Vinaya rules, when Lord Buddha started to frame different rules for the monks and the nuns. And as we all know that when he became enlightened, uh, he was actually quite alone. I won't say lonely, but he did not have a assembly or the gathering of Sangha with him. So the first teaching when he gave in Varanasi, so he encountered with his 5 students. And that was a big challenge for Lord Buddha in some way. Now, how to sustain them? So those 5 students are his students, and he is responsible for their well-being. Not only teachings, even just giving teachings will not feed them. They need food, they need a place to stay, they need clothes. So that formation of the Sangha, if we really look carefully with that, or the formation of the community of the monastics, was a turning point in Lord Buddha's lifetime. So that really made him so wise and so skillful that he learned a lot of things. Lord Buddha also have made some mistakes while framing those Vinaya rules, special rules for the monks. Sometimes he have to correct his own rules, go against what he has already said before, and correct them. So I won't go into details of any of those rules, but generally what this tells us is that it is not as he became enlightened and with his wisdom that everything he talks is kind of a pre-planned or predetermined. It was very much a kind of advice or the teaching that he gave to his audience, his students, depending upon that very time, place, the needs of those students. For example, if we look at the Vinaya rules, I won't go into detail. Let me just give you one example. For example, when the monks were, the rule for not killing were framed for the first time. Maybe I can take the example of not stealing. So at that time, Lord Buddha was not sure about what is the punishment for stealing at that time. So he has to consult the local king about how does the local king or the local ruler punished someone if they steal certain amount of thing that counts for stealing. So depending upon what the local rulers have the rules in frame for such kind of punishment, such kind of rules. So he just what should I say, copied that rule and made a similar one for Vinaya. Meaning that if a monk or a nun steals this amount of thing, then you will be facing this offense or penalty for doing that. So that shows that he was also in conversation, or he was also looking at the local situation, the local people's, whatever the rule of the land was there at that time. So not everything was created by his own thoughts or thinking. So this shows that he was very kind of skillful in framing the Vinaya rules. So the skillful part really plays a very important, generally in most of his teachings. And when he faced challenge to some of the rules, for example, he once framed a rule for the monks that monks can never do any kind of business. You cannot sell anything and earn money based on it. But then there's a story in the Vinaya canon where certain monk who had a lot of, what should I say, loans to pay to somebody. So there is no other way for them to pay the loan else than doing some form of business and to earn some money to pay back that loan. So when Lord Buddha was told about this thing, and he said, that's okay, then you can, if you have a loan to repay, then you can do some business. And with that business, you can repay the loan, but not for your own wealth inheritance. So this is what we can see from all of these minor rules or the minor teachings of the Lord Buddha, that in some way he was very open-minded. And he's ready to accept the change that he may need to follow or accept as it goes on. It is not something like, I have said this. This is my teaching. I have said this, and this is the final words. It was never like that. There's always the window for change if it is necessary. So therefore, generally, as we say that, and Lord Buddha himself, we all know that he said that, do not take my words for granted. Or just as I am a teacher, you do not need to believe everything that I said. You have to analyze and examine my words, that we all know. Now, this is the general about how the different teachings that he gave makes a difference in people's life. Now, coming back to the main point. So if that is the case, then Lord Buddha is said to have given tons and tons of different teachings during his lifetime. We sometimes say 84,000 heaps of teachings. Sometimes we talk about 3 baskets of teachings, but enormous amount of teachings he gave during his lifetime. In short, we can also say the teachings that can be categorized among the three turnings of the wheel for different audience and different students. And one of the key specialty that we always acclaim about his teaching is that he never teach from his own will, but always depending upon what is the need of the audience and what is the need of the students. And this may sound sometimes a little bit difficult for us to accept sometimes, but in reality, that seems to be the fact. And that's why we often talk about why are there so many different schools of thoughts in Buddhism? Why are there so many different teachings where some say this and some say that? And later on, as the Buddhism flourished in India, particularly around the 7th, 8th centuries, and then when it came to Tibet, we have all this development of so many new schools, new traditions that came along. But what is the core, the teaching behind all those different schools of thought or different teachings? I mean, we will discuss more about this tomorrow. But generally, what I meant to say is that all of them were suited for somebody at certain point of his life. Maybe not relevant today, but it was relevant those times. So I always, there is one particular instruction that Lord Buddha gave to the community of the Sangha, which which many people find a little bit strange, is that during those days, the monks were not allowed to take shower every day. So they were allowed to take shower or take bath every 15 days, once in a fortnight, which is a bit strange, taking into the climate and the weather conditions of India at that time. Isn't that a bit strange? But if you study that a little bit more carefully, then we can find that he did made an exception to it. He mentioned that there is a particular place in India called Assam Paranta. I'm not sure where exactly that place belonged to, but it's said to be one of the hottest places in India. So Lord Buddha make an exception that when the monks go to that place, they must take shower every day. So, which means that whatever the instructions he gave, there is some relevance to the time, the place, the area, the needs of the people. And also the availability of the resources in those places. And so going back to the main topic about the enormous amount of the teachings that Lord Buddha gave. So all of those were not meant for every individuals. That's for sure, I think. So if I believe that all of the teachings that Lord Buddha gave, is that only for me? Can I be the recipient of all of those teachings? Are they all meant for me? Am I going to practice all of them? I don't know. I'm not sure. There may be two ways to answer that. In some way, it may not be meant for one person. Definitely not at one time. Maybe as one progresses in one's life, we may need different instructions and different guidance. And that is one way where we can practice all of those teachings. That is one possibility, I guess. But if we look at how the other great teachers that came after Lord Buddha, how they look at all these different seemingly contradictory teachings or all those different teachings, how are they supposed to be put into one package or practiced for one individual person? We can see from Tsongkhapa's Lamrim Chemo, the great expositions on the stages of path to enlightenment. So Tsongkhapa has written, if we just look at the first, the outline, where Tsongkhapa really outlined the whole of his teaching into a broad outline. He said that he talks about the few greatnesses of the teachings of the Lord Buddha. The first thing is the greatnesses of seeing all teachings as non-contradictory. That was the first outline that Tsongkhapa talks about. Second thing is to explain the first one, where he says how to take all the teachings of the Buddha as one's own personal instruction. So this is the second one. Now, these 2 points that Tsongkhapa made is a very strong statement, I feel always. The greatnesses of Lamrim Chemo, what he meant by it is that generally, if you look at all the different scriptures, for example, in Tibetan edition, we have 110 or 108 volumes of the direct discourses Tengyur. And in Tibet, we have the sumbums, or the collections of masters from all different traditions. So if you are supposed to put all those teachings on your table, and how you're going to select which one is for you and which one not. So Tsongkhapa clearly said that the greatness of the Lamrim Chemo is that text like Lamrim Chemo is kind of a manual or a key that unlocks and bring all those teachings into one way for one's own practice. So that is why the greatness of all the teachings of the Lord Buddha being non-contradictory. They are not contradictory if one is able to practice them in one's life. That is the first thing. And the second thing that Tsongkhapa mentioned is that the second greatness of these teachings is that the greatness of the Lamrim teaching is that how we can take all of them as one's personal instruction. So I think this is one area where so many people get confused, maybe not confused. So many people do not really look in that way. Generally, in the philosophical debate, the text, we have metaphors as looking at the thing. If you are looking at a beautiful flower on the table, then you will, even though you enjoy the beauty of the flower, but still you feel that there is a distance between you and the flower. So the flower is an object that exists away from you, not a part of you. So when you read all those texts, someone like me, I can put myself as the best example. When I study all of those texts for the last 20 years, especially in the first 10 to 15 years, we study them as a general philosophical academic text. So it's something like enjoying the beauty of a flower on a table. So being distant with what is there in the text and how you live your life away from it. So, so Tsongkhapa very clearly says that is because you're not able to see those teaching as a personal instruction for you. You're not able to see that Lord Buddha is teaching that particularly to you. So when we are able to do that, and then we can see that everything is everything comes into one's own place. They unfold into one single package that is specially designed for you. there is a beautiful story of many of you may know that in the Japanese Buddhism, the Pure Land Buddhism, uh, the great scholar and the practitioner Shinran. So he writes in his book and the teaching, a very, very beautiful teaching, where he says that the Lord Amitabha came to the world only to liberate me. So the Lord Amitabha gave teaching only to liberate me from samsara. So that is the kind of connection that one can see in those teachings. Even though the Lord Amitabha came for everyone, but one can particularly see a special connection with that. So I think, yeah, in this way, if one is able to look at all the teachings as one's own personal instruction, then one can utilize or take all those teachings as a part of one's own instruction. So there is no contradictory in any of the teachings. So these are the few important, what I felt, kind of aspects or the qualities of the Lord Buddha's teaching. And these are some of the reasons that really can tell us that why his teachings are still relevant to to day-to-day life of everyone. And maybe not the whole teachings, but every one of you and every one of us, someday we may find certain part of teaching. Maybe it's a Vajrayana teaching, maybe it's a Kadam teaching, maybe it's a Lamrim teaching, maybe it's just one of the beautiful sayings, or maybe it's just one of simple advice that you receive from your teacher, that you get inspiration from that sort of teaching. And that sort of teaching really help you to face the difficult challenges in your life. For example, we all know that this beautiful line from Shantideva, where he talks about how to, what should I say, how to accept the reality that is in front of you and then learn to move on in modern language. We all face difficult times when we have problems, family problems, relationship problems, business problems, all sort of problems that we face in our lifetime. How we are not able to, we cling on those problems, but we are not able to move on, accept the reality and moving on. That is the biggest challenge for all of us, as we all do have experience. But Chandideva's words about, if you're able to find a solution, then why should one worry? If there is no solution to the problem, there is no reason or benefit of worrying about it. I think this line by itself is such a simple line, but it's so powerful. And when every one of us, when we go through these difficult times, difficult phases in our life, we find refuge in these beautiful teachings. And these beautiful teachings really come in our way and save us. So I think the reason is that these teachings were given by those masters who themselves have gone through all those difficulties, challenges, and then they found the way out of it. So that makes them what a great teacher they are. Someone like Shantideva. So these are the few points that I wanted to discuss with you today. And we will discuss more about the other aspects of the different sects and the traditions tomorrow. So maybe I will end here the brief discussion today here and then open for discussions through Q&A. Thank you. Please, if there is any comments or any questions.
Rinpoche, when you were first studying the Vinaya, was there anything in particular that helped you with your practice in a monastic life?
Yeah, that's a very important question. So I have to think about it. The way the Vinaya is taught in the Tibetan monastic system is it is taught at a very later part of the curriculum. There may be a few reasons for that. One of the reasons is that Vinaya is supposed to taught only to the fully ordained monks. I mean, some part of the major part of the Vinaya text. So that is the reason why it's kept at the end of curriculum. And in Tibetan, we have a saying that when you are first ordained, you were not taught Vinaya. And when the Vinaya is taught to you, it is too late to practice. uh, For me, the first year of studying Vinaya was really kind of, in some way, kind of surprising also, should I say, to see to see the detail of the rules and so on. But more important for me was about the history of the formation of Sangha in India at that time, and also about, what should I say, the beautiful teachings of the Lord Buddha behind the Vinaya rules. For example, why did Lord Buddha say that? Why did Lord Buddha frame that rule? Many of those were to earn the respect of the local people, to kind of to build a harmony relationship between the community. So for the Lord Buddha, the monastic was not a complete run away from the community. The formation of Sangha was to live peacefully, harmoniously with the community, the lay people, as both of them needs for each other's happiness. So therefore, that was one thing that I learned. And that the Vinaya was very important for the sustenance of the Sangha community. And those tiny aspects of the rules were really important for the continuous, the purity of the community. The stronger the purity is maintained, what should I say? Generally, it is believed the Sangha community will foster and live longer, and there will be higher respect from the lay community. So those were the important points that I find it. But other than that, it was a kind of a lot of information, a lot of stuff that we don't really get to see on a day-to-day basis. So generally, for example, someone like me, I became a monk when I was very young, around 7 to 8 years old. I can barely say I don't remember anything at that time about what the vows or anything meant to us. I mean, we took only the novice vow at that time. But even then, we were only told about the basic rules and the regulations, basic things that we are not allowed to do. We are even not, as a kid, how much detail can you even what should I say, understand. Even the teachers want to tell you. So in the monasteries, usually they find the most skillful teacher, or maybe the teacher who can explain things really in a simple language. So such a kind of teachers are usually hired to tell the young monks and the nuns about those rules. That's what I think. Any other comments?
Rinpoche, you had mentioned, you're studying at the Harvard Divinity School in this master's course. I was just curious about your experience there, what you're studying. Are you specializing in any particular topic while you're there?
At the Harvard Divinity School, even though my area of focus is Buddhist studies, but one of the main things that I gained by coming to Harvard Divinity School is my exposure to Buddhist teachings or Buddhist traditions other than Tibetan Buddhism. So I get to know a lot about Pali tradition, studying about the texts, commentaries written by many great scholars, Pali tradition especially. And also I get to study about East Asian religion department, where I get to study about the Japanese Buddhism, Korean Buddhism. So that was so important for a Buddhist monk to know about, first thing about all the different traditions of the Buddhist community that lives in this world. Sometimes when you are grown in one particular tradition for so long and spend whole of your life in one monastic community, what happens is sometimes you tend to forget that there are other traditions more important than you. Even though we believe that we consider others more important, but in practicality, sometimes you feel that your tradition is the best and is the supreme tradition. And the main reason is that you do not have enough access to the other traditions. So that is one very important lesson that I learned after coming to Harvard. I should have learned that lesson much, much earlier. And I think that is a lesson, that is the thing that many of the monks should know. It has to be a part of our study. I'm proposing that at the monastery. That is one thing. The other thing is, of course, I learned about other religious tradition. It was in the divinity school. I also took some classes on Christianity, Hinduism, and also, what should I say, about one of the main focus that I paid importance, and most of my time is about what we called the ministry studies. The ministry studies is about compassionate cultivation practices, such kind of techniques and such kind of techniques or methods that we used in day-to-day life. For example, CPE, when you go to hospitals and how you talk to dying people, sick people. And so in Harvard Divinity School, we have very good courses on such kind of trainings. And I was actually first shocked that such a academic institutions to have such courses which has very strong influence from Buddhist teachings. And our courses use a lot of readings from Tibetan Buddhists also. Also, they use a lot of readings from modern Buddhist teachers, mostly Western teachers. And also they use a lot of techniques that we have from Lamrim and Pali traditions. So all of these wonderful teachings of the Buddha that were given on compassion, cultivations, and love and so on. They really find a practical way to bring all of them together without using the language and build a very beautiful program to teach the students about how to work in this environments. And another key courses that I took interest was about the mental health. Of course, the mental health is such an important topic for all of us in the modern times, especially in university settings, in academic settings. The mental health is so important, not just for the students, but also for the staffs, teachers, professors as well. And Harvard has just last year studied the Thich Nhat Hanh Mindfulness Center. So it's a full-time faculty, so about mindfulness practices. So there's a lot of, what should we say, Buddhist stuffs going on in modern academic world. These are the exposures that I get. And there's a lot to learn from all of these things. I felt that when you graduate as Geshe, you have pretty much studied everything, which is not true. So maybe you have studied pretty much of the textual knowledge that you have in your curriculum, but there's so much left to learn, especially about practical Buddhist thoughts, about new Buddhist thoughts, how that can bring maximum benefit to the people in the world. So our Buddhist teachings and the Buddhist approach has to go beyond the small comfort zones or the circles that we have in our own community. For example, if you look at monasteries, of course, we are very successful with our own settlement. We are very successful with our own preservation. But if you look beyond all of those things, as the Buddhists always pray about, may the teachings of the Buddha flourish and spread all over the world. It is not about saying that Buddhism has to be the main religion in the world. It's about bringing the teaching of the Lord Buddha, the benefit to the maximum people. And I think for that, there's a lot that the Sangha community has to learn from the modern world, to combine them and bring our teaching, maybe not using the language or maybe using different language, how we can bring the teaching out into the world. Yeah, those are the few things that I have learned in the last 1.5 years here in Divinity School.
It sounds like you enjoy being a student again, Rinpoche.
Yes, exactly. We're always students until we die, maybe even after that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rinpoche, I have another question. Is do you have a message when you go back to Tawang and to Sarah about what you've learned in the West to give to them about meeting of the worlds?
I do have so many messages that I want to bring back, but I don't know if there is anyone who wants to take it. That is the main thing. I mean, someone who spent last 20 years plus in monastery, in my own monastery, so they took pride in me for going to the Harvard. So they believe that Harvard is a magical place. When you go there, something boom happens, and no, that's also all kind of illusion, and that is the first illusion that we have to get rid of. But as I said before, it is so important to preserve your own tradition, preserve your own practice, whatever you have been doing for all these years. Because our elder generations have worked so hard in the monasteries for the last 50 years. I'm talking about exile community. And they have been success in the so far with all the great accomplishments. But as we have to move on from now, so even the monastic communities, we have to really look forward to what's going to happen in next 10 to 20 years from now on. The first thing is about the survival or the sustenance of the monastic community itself. This may not be so relevant topic here, but the Sangha community is not growing anymore, even in those big monasteries. So that is the first challenge that we face. But the Sangha community, the purpose of the Sangha community is to preserve and sustain the great teachings, the tradition that we have. And what is the purpose of those great teachings and the tradition is the preservation itself is not the main goal, but the benefit of preserving these things, bringing to the world, especially in this modern world, everybody needs, what should I say, the teachings of the Lord Buddha. So in order to do that, we may need to adopt new measures. We may need to adopt new ways. We may need to make some big changes. So, and everything, all of those things has to happen with a plan. It won't come. So we cannot always wait with prayers that may the teachings of the Buddha flourish all over the world. Just praying itself is not enough. So the monastic leadership, the Sangha leadership, I'm talking about Tibetan Sangha leadership, has a huge responsibility in the coming years, in the coming decade, about what's things going to happen in the next few decades. So that is one message that I wanted to bring back. It's a very strong and a difficult, but that's a very necessary one at the time being. And for my hometown, Tawang is a very small hometown in the northeastern part of India. And even though it's a very small hometown, most of you have never heard about it. But politically and culturally, for the preservation of Tibetan Buddhism and culture, my hometown becomes very important. It will become even more important in the next few decades because in our hometown, we are under the government of India, so we are independent. We have our own freedom to do what we like. And the whole population is Buddhist. So preservation and sustenance of Tibetan cultures and the traditions, our hometown will play a major role. That's what I think in the next few decades, just as any other Himalayan traditions. So therefore, but even this will not come without any challenges. We do have a lot of challenges about preserving our own culture because of influx of huge Indian cultures into our small populated, where we are becoming minority in our own community. So this is an issue. I'm not sure about how important are these issues, but these are the issues that are faced from all the Buddhist communities in India, from the Himalayan regions, from Ladakh to from the North Ladakh to East Tawang. So they all face these issues. And we know that if you look at the history, or if you can make some guess or assumption about what's going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years. So this Himalayan range has to be the main force for the preservation of this culture and tradition. Because we never know about the future in Tibet under the present Chinese regime. And the Tibetan exile community is getting smaller in India. So this Himalayan range, they do have a very strong responsibility. So I'm sure many of you have no idea about my hometown, but since Annie, you asked about it, so it gives me an opportunity to share about it. Thank you for asking.
So, Rinpoche, I have a question. I was intrigued by your comment that people ask you whether or not Tibetan monks and nuns meditate. And we live in, most of us live very busy lives. And either we're very lazy Dharma students like me and don't take time to sit down and meditate, or just, are working or have family obligations or whatever. And I just wondered what advice you offer to people who, don't necessarily have the bandwidth to take up meditation practices themselves. So, how to incorporate Buddha Dharma, maybe without so much of a focus on meditation practice itself.
I think that meditation practice is very important. So we have to work towards it, finding time for it. So even though we may be busy and we have all those things to do, but I think it's not about how long or the time or duration is not important, but to do a really sitting meditation, what we call focus meditation, is so important. And this is one thing that the Tibetan community itself has to learn and has to do more. I'm not saying that all the Tibetan monks are not meditating. Of course, that is wrong to say. The great teachers, there are so many monks who meditate hours and hours every day. For example, most of the senior monks in the monastery has around 2 to 3 hours of their daily commitment, doing prayers, visualizing. So these are all meditations. These are not only focus meditation, but also what we call analytical meditation as well. So these are great. But if you look at the general, the percentage of the younger Sangha community, there is definitely a need to pay a little bit more attention to sitting meditation. What I meant is sitting meditation. And for that, we need to learn from our other friends. Maybe Western Sangha community can teach, contribute something towards that for the Tibetan community. And also our Pali tradition brothers and sisters can contribute a lot. So that's really something that we need to do. I think that unless one sits down and meditate, it's very difficult to do any practice in reality. We may, if in this busy life, we may find a book, read it in train. Of course, that will help you. But it is only when you really sit down calmly and then give yourself an opportunity to look really deep into yourself about what's going on with you. First of all, let's just forget about everything else. Let me just look back into myself and see what's really going on. And then, so unless you're able to see what's really going on with you, and then you won't be able to find a solution to the problem that is within you. So for that, I strongly recommend that we all have to find time for sitting meditation. That's what I think.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Any further comments? If not, maybe we can conclude.
We can do our dedication prayers. Jennifer, somebody?
Yes.
Sonny?
Yeah.
So we can thank Rinpoche for the teachings, for the mandala, and then dedicate our merits. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. May my Venerable Lama's, oh, okay, yes, another one. May my Venerable Lama's life be firm, his white divine actions spread in the 10 directions. May the torch of the teachings of Losang always remain, dispelling the darkness of all beings in the 3 realms. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. Gewadi Nududag Lama Sange Drubyone Droa Chikyang Malupa Deyi Sala Gopasho Changchob Semchog Rinpoche Makye Kanam Kegyuchi Kepa Nyampa Mepayam Gongne Gondu Pavasho. Rinpoche, there's a prayer that Lama Zopa Rinpoche wrote for us for the long life of His Holiness that I don't speak Tibet. Oh, here's the English, but it's not so much for the land of snows, but for the whole world. So it's another prayer that we sing for His Holiness. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewels, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. And Rinpoche, we would also like to chant in English this prayer that His Holiness very kindly wrote for us to recite for Lama Zopa Rinpoche to return quickly. Peerless teacher and assembly of the children of the victorious ones, Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, victorious Losang, father and sons, along with the lineage masters, all the objects of refuge of infinite lands, please bestow the virtue and goodness of accomplishing this prayer here and now. Holding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, you wore the armor of patience that is never discouraged. Incomparably venerable Guru, to you I make request. While striving single-pointedly for the sake of the victorious one's teachings, the sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, and from other beings, you suddenly departed to peace. What a great loss. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the blessings of the ocean of the 3 jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the children of the victorious ones, may the smile of reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples.
Thank you so much. See you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche. Thank you so much,
Thank
Rinpoche.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you.
We
Thank you.
can take time.
Ciao. Thank you so much.